We've got 3 games on the Christmas Day NFL betting slate, and I have my favorite NFL player prop for each of these games. 3 NFL player props for you guys to hammer for the NFL Christmas Day betting slate. Now, because of some holiday travel, I am recording this before the events of Sunday have been finished, so I do not have a recap on Sunday for you. What I do have is my overall season results, and I've been a little bit in a cold streak recently, admittedly. We broke out of that a little bit on Thursday, but we'll have to see how the rest of the weekend goes. On the entire year, we are up 16.35 units with an ROI above 9%. So not horrible. ROI above 9% isn't terrible, but we had been in the double digits for so long that it was tough to get below that. I'm hoping that we can get things to turn around. Hopefully things have already turned around by the time you are watching this. And then I hope that continues on Monday with my 3, again, Christmas NFL player props. If you're new to my channel, would appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button. And let's get into it. So the first play that we're going to go ahead and lock in here in the Raiders versus Chiefs game is Isaiah Pacheco under 66.5 rushing yards. This is at -115 odds at DraftKings. So it's our first play of the slate. It's also the first game of the slate as well. It's also our only under play for the 3 games. We're going to be fading Pacheco in his first game back from injury. Now, this Raiders season has mostly been a train wreck. Obviously, when you fire your head coach, that's not a great sign. But they actually have a pretty decent defense. According to DVOA, they have the 11th ranked defense in the NFL. I'm guessing most people you ask would assume that their defense is worse than that. With that thought in mind, they don't give up a ton of rushing yards either. In the past month, they're allowing 95.33 rushing yards per game. That is the 8th lowest in the NFL in that span. These 2 teams just played about a month ago, and despite the fact that the Chiefs won pretty big, and that Pacheco scored 2 times, he only ran for 55 yards. On the year, Pacheco has only cleared this number in 4 of 12 games, and this is not going to be one of those situations where we're fading win percentage. I know sometimes I like to do that. That's not what we're going to be doing in this one. I actually think there is something to the fact that Pacheco has gone under more often than not. It's because he scores a lot and is on the Chiefs, his number gets inflated a little bit. We're just taking advantage of that. I also like the fact that the line movement over the course of the week has been in our favor. So this line opened up for Pacheco at 68.5 rushing downs, and it's been consistently bet down as the week has gone on. Obviously, right now we are betting it at 66.5. FanDuel currently has this line at 61.5, which is just crazy. And this is also going to be Pacheco's first game back from his shoulder injury. Now, there aren't any reports about whether he's going to get the full workload or not. Even if he gets the full workload that he was getting prior to his injury, I still like this to go on under. And if the Chiefs work in Jerick McKinnon or Clyde Edwards-Helaire more than they were normally, the under is definitely going to hit. Let's hope that it does, and we can cash our first play of the evening of the slate. Next up, in the Ravens versus 49ers game, I'm taking Gus Edwards over 38.5 rushing yards, -115 odds at BetRivers. And you can also get it at -125 if you are like me and you cannot use BetRivers because they are the worst sportsbook out there. Now, this one is definitely going to feel scary, 100%. I'll go ahead and label this my Pepto play of the day. Going up against the 49ers is scary. They're 5.5 to 6 point favorites against the Ravens, depending on where you look. But sign me up for the Gus bus in this one. I'm not necessarily telling you that he's going to blow up. Actually, I don't think he has the ceiling to blow up, which is why we aren't pumping his number up. But I do like for him to have a decent game. Overall, the 49ers defense is awesome, and I will not tell you anything to the contrary. They're the 4th ranked defense in the NFL, according to DVOA. But if there's one area in which the 49ers defense, can be had, it's on the ground. They're only 18th in rush defense DVOA, which, that's not among the worst. It's sure a lot better than 4th, which they are, again, overall. Granted, if you just look at raw stats, you're going to see that they don't give up a ton of rushing yards. That's mostly because in every single game, they're pretty consistently beating the crap out of people. So they have the fewest rushing attempts against. If no one's running against them, nobody's going to be running for a lot of yards against them either. What I can say is that their yards per carry against is at 4.1, and that's 21st in the NFL. What the 49ers did was they signed up for a very good pass rush, which was a good move because they're consistently winning. So that pass rush obviously is very important. But what they sacrificed is not having a great run defense. Generally, that doesn't come back to bite them because they're so good. And I'm not even saying that it's going to come back to bite them entirely in this game. We're just looking for Gus Edwards to have roughly 40 yards. Again, I specifically didn't pump him up above this number because I don't think that the ceiling is there, but I do think that his floor is there. Speaking of his floor, he's cleared this in 10 of 14 games this year. I also like the workload that he's in line for when you consider the fact that Keaton Mitchell is now out for the year. It's a bummer for Mitchell, who's a young player, an electric player, but that does lead to more carries for the Gus bus. On the year, Gus Edwards has had double-digit carries in every single game except for 4. If he can get us to 10 plus carries in this one, I'm pretty confident that he can also get us to 40 yards as well. And next up, our third and final pick of the evening in the Giants versus Eagles game, Saquon Barkley, 60 plus rushing yards, plus 118 odds at FanDuel. As for our last play, finally taking a pumped up prop, getting Saquon to get to 60 yards for some plus money action. As you can guess, I didn't like a ton of the pumped up plays for Christmas, so I didn't want to force anything just for the sake of having it. But I do like this Saquon angle. And we aren't even pumping him up to have a ton of yards. His over-under is in the 50s. We're just hoping he gets to 60. Now, if you look at season-long stats, the entire year, everybody's going to tell you that you can't run against the Eagles, that they have a very stout rush defense, and that you do not want to have a running back's rushing yard over against them. I'm here to tell you that has not been the case for about a month now. Over the past 4 weeks, the Eagles are allowing 139.5 rushing yards per game. That is the 8th most in the NFL in that span. Now, if you look at the entire season, they're only giving up the second fewest rushing yards allowed, but that's not the case recently. As I mentioned, they're not nearly as good now as they were at the beginning of the year. And just look at the recent running backs that have gone against them. Isaiah Pacheco had 89 yards on an over-under of 55.5. Christian McCaffrey had 93 yards on an over-under of 78.5. Tony Pollard had 59 yards. That cashed his over. Kenneth Walker, cashed his over with 86 rushing yards on an over-under of 55.5. Despite the fact that running backs are pretty consistently clearing their over-under against the Eagles recently, the Giants are still, or the books are still pricing Giants running back in the 50s because people have too much respect for the Eagles defense and how they were at the beginning of the year. Now, looking at Saquon, last week was no doubt gross. But prior to last week, he had cleared 60 or more rushing yards in 8 of 9 games, even in a disgusting offense that really can't do anything. Because of how little weapons the Giants have, they just feed Saquon the ball. Last week, again, was gross. He only had 9 carries. That's the only game this season in which he had fewer than 10 carries. And it's actually the only game in which he had fewer than 12 carries. It was by far his season low. In every other game, he had at least 12 carries. He's also gotten 20 plus carries in 4 games as well. I see this being a situation in which the Giants consistently ride Saquon. He should have a little bit of success doing so, hopefully getting us to 60 yards, cashing this plus money banger. And that's all we got. 3 plays for you guys to lock in. Let's hope that we can get these 3 to cash. If you're riding with me, make sure to comment and let me know. Other than that, remember to like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff. Appreciate everybody for watching, and have a good one.